Good morning and welcome to the overview of the 6.6 release of PleaseReview. Jessie Dukes is the Product Manager and will be conducting this webinar this morning. Please, if you have any questions, use the question bar at the side and Jessie will answer them at the end. Over to you, Jessie.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for attending this webinar today. As Lisa mentioned, we're going to be talking about 6.6, which is the most recent release for PleaseReview. We're going to look at the new features introduced in this release. I'm going to talk about them a little bit. I'm then going to do a short demo of those new features. And then there will be time, as Lisa mentioned, for questions at the end. So please do put them in the comments box. There'll be plenty of time to get to those at the end. So as I mentioned, quick overview of the key release features, short demo and a Q&A. So 4 major new features and enhancements in this release. There are also numerous other minor enhancements, changes and fixes. If you want the full details of those, please do look at the technical release notes that are available from our support team. But today we're going to focus on just the main user features that people will see are different and will get most value from. So those 4 new features, the largest and most significant new feature is we have added the ability to include some customizable metrics at a review level. Now I'll go into all of these in more detail shortly. But this is a new feature for 6.6, entirely new. We have added some additional timestamps onto the reconciliation report based on numerous customer requests. We understand that having a full audit trail, including timestamps of every stage of the process, is very, very important to our customers. And therefore, we've added some additional timestamps to the report. We have made another change, which again is a much requested change by customers, to allow you to at a workgroup level some defaults for the comment downloads in the report. And finally, we have created a new role. It's configuration only, so it won't be part of all of the main roles that you would usually get, but it is available via some configuration setup. And that role is called a close only role. So I'll talk about all of these more now. So the first major feature is the review metrics feature. So these review metrics are created at a work group level, and there are 3 review metric types that you can set up. These 3 types are string, integer, and selection. So a bit of description for each of those. The string type metric is, as it sounds, a string of letters or numbers with a predefined character limit. Integer, again, relatively self-explanatory, a set of numbers with a predefined range, and then selection, set of predefined selection options, which will then appear in the review as a drop-down list. So you can make these metrics mandatory, and they will be reflected in the reconciliation report. So this provides a really useful and, as I said, entirely customizable extra point of data capture in your reviews that will then also be reflected in your reports. So it just provides that add bit of data and a good way to perhaps relate different reviews together by looking through the reports quickly. You can see that this review relates to perhaps a project coding or a project name, or you could have something set up as a specific department perhaps, and you could have those set across your work groups to add just another level of consistency and, as I said, another bit of data that is captured within that report and then can be used from that point on. I'll show you how to set all of this up in the demo, and with a couple of examples there as well. The next point I mentioned is some additional timestamps onto the reconciliation report. So the reconciliation report includes 3 new timestamps. So as you can see on the right, there's an example. The data points, the timestamps now included in the reconciliation report is not just the due date. We also have the time and date that the review was started, the time and date that the review was actually closed, and the time and date that the review was completed. So you now have the full spectrum overview of every single stage in that process, in the review process, and an exact time and date as to when those stages were actually completed and when the review was started, right through to the point it was completed, and also versus the end date or the due date, target due date. So again, much requested feature this from our customers. So hopefully this will be well received. Again, I'll show you how this looks and how this works in the demo. The next thing to talk about is the default comment download selector. So this, again, set at a workgroup level, very, very easy to set up if you're a workgroup admin. And you can basically predefine the default comments that you want downloaded in the reports. So again, just adds a whole extra bit of control and consistency for workgroup administrators, so they can make sure that every time someone downloads a report from within that work group, the parts of that report included will be consistent. So the defaults that you can set are showed on the right here. So you can set the status, the comment proposed change status to be included in the download, the type of comment or proposed change, and whether or not you include the full track changes. So users can still customize on a per download basis, but every time they then go to re-download the report again, it will reset and take on those workgroup level defaults. And again, if you hit the reset to default button, again, it will pick up those workgroup level defaults. So just adds that bit of consistency and reduces any margin for error in terms of people perhaps downloading the wrong reports or whatever. If you set this up at your workgroup level, the default report download will follow these predefined selections. So it just helps with, as I said, some consistency and some additional control. The next thing to talk about is this new close only role that we've created. So we have a number of other configuration only roles like reply only, etc. But this is a new role that we've created, working closely with a couple of key customers. We understand that this role, after looking through their process, this role was actually something that they required. They wanted a little bit more control in an author-based role, a little bit more control in the closeout process, and therefore we created this role for those customers and for our other customers as well. So this is, as I mentioned, an author-based role, so therefore relates back to a power user license. It's an author-based role. It is, as I mentioned, configuration only, but is something we can help you set up if required. And what this role can do is, similarly to an author, it can accept or close or reject proposed changes and comments. It can also merge any conflicting changes, but what it cannot do is make any new proposed changes or any new comments or replies or anything like that. So, if you wanted to keep even greater control of your closeout process, then perhaps rather than using a regular author role, you might want to use this close only role, so that you can be sure that there will be no additional information added at the point at which you want to close that review out, and all that will happen will be that the information and contributions within that review are resolved only, accepted, rejected, or merged. No new information will then be added by this close only role. So I'm not going to demonstrate this one today, just because if you're familiar with the author role, you'll understand basically how this works. But if there is further interest in this role and you would like to see how it actually works in practice, please do let me know after the webinar, and we can arrange to get that set up and walk you through the specifics of the close only role. And also worth referring to the customer release notes as well, because that has full details of what this role can and cannot do versus a regular author role, set out in a table. So very, very simple and easy to understand. Okay. So that is an overview of the main features in this new release. As I said, there are numerous other enhancements and things, but those are the main new features and enhancements. I'm now going to show a quick demo of those new features. So I'm now switching over to PleaseReview. I'm logged in PleaseReview here as I'm a workgroup admin in this case. So those of you familiar with 6.4 onwards, this will of course look as you would expect. If you're on a version earlier than 6.4, then this will likely look a little bit different, because of course we added some new UI elements in 6.4, and therefore this all looks new. But from 6.4 onwards, this will look very consistent to you. Also, for those users using 6.5, you will notice, of course, the templates feature which was brought in 6.5 as well. So otherwise, though, 6.6, nothing new at this stage. So I'm first off going to demonstrate some of the changes that we have made to the reconciliation report with those additional points of data capture here. So I have a review here. It's in the closed status. It is not yet completed, and I am going to go in to view that report. So I'm going to open up this report. This is a very, very simple review with just a couple of reviewers, and as you can see in the top left hand side here, we have the couple of new points here, and I will show you how this all is set up. First off, those new data, those new timestamps, which are displayed here, start date, closeout date, and the completed date and time. This review is still in the closed state, so of course that is not yet completed. But as soon as I complete this review, that will then be updated with the correct date and time. And the other item here is this review metrics part here. So these are entirely configurable categories. These are just some things I have set up myself. So I have a project ID code, I have a project type, and a review department. As I said, you can do whatever you like with those. These are all different types of metrics as well, and I'll show you how those are all set up. The other thing worth mentioning is the default downloads. So I have some default downloads set up here. My defaults are set to just pick up everything and show proposed changes as tracked, pick up all those status items, and pick up all comments. I'll make an edit to that, and I will show you how that is then reflected as well. So that's what it looks like, what these new metric points look like at the end of a review. But I'm now going to go back and show you how to actually set these up. So if I jump across now into the admin tab, I have my work group here. This is the work group I'm a member of, and the work group I am a admin of. So I'm going to go into settings, and you can see here I have a number of configuration settings that I've already set up, and I did have metrics, and I also did have the default comments. I've deleted them just for the purposes of being able to show you how to set them up from scratch again. So these are just some existing items. So the capacity and opinion are a couple of changes that came in with 6.4. So any users using 6.4 and above will be familiar with what these are. Other great points of data capture in your review process. But now I'm going to show you how to add some new review metrics to start with. So very, very simply, select add. You'll be presented with this drop down. Choose the review option there. And then another drop down will be presented, and here you will need to find review metrics right at the bottom here. So if I hit that, you can then choose whether to permit these review metrics to pick up metrics from other work groups or not. In this case, I'm going to permit, and I'm also going to allow override, and then I'm going to save. So that is our metrics added, or the ability to have metrics is added. Now, if I go back to this workgroup level, you'll see I have a new button here called metrics. If I hit that button, these are some metrics I set up previously. The ones you will see that were in that previous review: project ID code, project type, and project department. And another here. I'm going to delete this. If I want to delete it, it's very, very simple. Just like that, delete it. In order to add a new metric, again, very, very easy. Hit new in the top right hand corner here, and you'll be presented with this metric creation window. So I'm going to create a review demo metric type. This is your metric title, so this will be what is actually presented when you see it in the reconciliation report, and also when your users are completing the metrics within the review setup. So I'll show you how this all follows through. You then also have the option to add a tooltip, so you can add a little bit of description here. So if a user were to mouse over and wasn't sure what that metric actually meant, you could add a little bit of description in here if you wanted to, and then they could see that. So just that they're sure that what the metric's actually related to, and then you can select whether you want to make this mandatory or not. So I am in this case not going to. I'm going to make this again, various examples. So you have your string type here, which just allows you, as I mentioned, to set a character limit. You have your integer type, which allows you to set a minimum and maximum value for your number selection. And then you have your actual selection type metric. On this selection type metric, you simply add a new metric type and separate it with a semicolon, and then you can have a drop-down list there. So I'm going to just make this an integer type with a minimum value of 1, a maximum of 10, and create that. And then there you are. So that metric is in, and you can see that it's not required. You can see these two are mandatory, and then we have 2 here that are not actually required in the review. So that is how to set up metrics. Very, very simple. And as I said, if you wanted to delete that metric again, it's very, very easy. Just hit the delete button, as I showed you earlier on. I'm now going to show you how to set up the default comment selector. And then once we've set that up, we will actually go in and start a review. And I can show how this all works in practice once it's all set up correctly. So to set up the default comment selector, again, go to Settings and to Add. Once again, make the category selection Review. And here you are looking for default comment selector options. Once you've hit that, you'll see that this list comes up here of all of the various options you have for what you want to be displayed in the review. In this case, I'm going to have only status open displayed, and I'm going to have all my other comments, all proposed changes, and I'm also going to include show track changes. I'm going to save that. And there we go, those are set up. So very, very simple to get those up and running, quick and easy. And those will now take place in any new review that is kicked off from this point. So it won't retrospectively add metrics or anything like that. But any reviews kicked off from this point will then pick up those new metrics, etc. So to show that in practice, I'm going to go ahead and create a new review. So of course, everyone will be very familiar with this setup. I'm going to add just a due date of tomorrow. Add documents, again, very simple. I'm going to add a reviewer. And then this is where you will see the first point of difference in 6.6. So we have all of our usual review options, email options, subteams, but you also notice now we have this new review metrics tab. The metrics tab also includes a small asterisk there, which shows that this includes some compulsory metrics. So if I go across now into review metrics, you can see here they are. This is the one I just set up now, that integer type. I have another integer type, a selection type, and a string type. So I'm going to fill in some of these. I'm going to fill in my project code, project ID code, and I'm also going to fill in my project type. The review department is also a required metric, but I'm not going to set that up at this stage. I'm going to leave that, and I will show you how this is prompted. So if I save that, you do get a prompt here saying that mandatory field is empty, but do you want to continue? And you can at that stage still continue. So you can continue to start, continue through to the start of your review and go ahead and start the review. So I'm now going to go back to the control panel. And I'm actually going to just quickly close out this review just so I can show these features all the way through the workflow. So if I go ahead and close this out and close review, you will see that again I get a prompt. There are still required review metrics to be entered. Are you sure you want to close the review? You can still close it, so I'm going to click OK here. But at this stage, I am then not able to complete. So if I try and complete this review, it will say review metrics are required before you can complete the review. So I can't do that. It stops me from actually being able to complete that review. So I can go back and into my review details and review options and complete that metric. So back to the review metrics tab, and I'm going to add a product team. Okay, can save that. So that's me now completed all of my compulsory review metrics. So I can go back to that closeout screen now, onto the review closeout, and I can now complete that review. So after it's been completed, we know this is the usual prompt. You will not be able to restart the review. Okay, completed. So very, very simple, very, very easy, but does have that extra bit of control to make sure that all of those review metrics, if compulsory, are completed before you can actually complete the review. Now I'm also going to show how these are, how these are displayed in the reports. So I'm going to go back quickly and view the report. Now, as you can see, obviously we have no comments or anything in this review, but you can see, again, those new timestamps and a completed timestamp this time as well, because we just did that. And then you can also see my review metric IDs. Now, so there's all the review metrics, there's your timestamps. The default comment selector, if I hit select comments here, you can see the only one that I'd chosen to be on my defaults was open. None of those others are brought through this time, versus previously where they were, of course, all selected. So now just open. But all of my comment types are selected, and I have proposed changes on. Now I could go ahead and change those if I wanted to. I could tick another couple of those for this one specific review, for this one specific report. But then when I go to select comments again, I can hit return to defaults, and it will be back to those workgroup defaults. So that is the completed demonstration of the new features. Now is a good time for questions. If anyone has any questions, I will hand over Lisa. I'm not sure if there have been any questions that have come in.
Hi, there is none just now, which congratulations, Jessie. That means you've conducted an excellent webinar, and nobody has asked any questions, and you've managed to answer all the questions before then. We'll give people a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds so that they can see if anything wants to come in. So please feel free to use the questions section on the side of the page.
No problem. While I have a few minutes waiting for those questions to come in, it's also worth a quick mention that our US Horizons conference is coming up for anyone who is based on that side of the world. At the Horizons, we'll have a PleaseReview stream. We'll be talking about the roadmap for 2020 and beyond, and we'll have some customer experiences, some customers coming to share their experiences of using PleaseReview. You'll have the opportunity to be a product manager for a day. So basically, we'll have a session where you will give me your feedback and your thoughts and your ideas and your opinions on what you think would be great. There's some best practice for PleaseReview implementations, some tips and tricks for using all of these new features we've introduced over this year. So that's on the 8th and 9th of October in Atlanta. If you do want more details, please do visit horizons.ideagen.com. So a very quick plug there. And now back over to the questions if we have any.
Yes, just on Horizons there, Jessie, actually. Horizons has been growing in the US, and we had over 100 people there last year. It's a great event. It's great to meet people from different sectors, find out best practices, share ideas, share different ways of how people use the product. It really is an excellent event. There's dinner, there's some entertainment. It's great. We always get great feedback on it, so it'd be lovely to see anybody that came along. So no, Jessie, there doesn't actually seem to be any questions, so congratulations again. That does mean you've managed to answer them all within the webinar. Thanks very much for everybody for attending. Thanks, Jessie, for conducting the webinar today, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And if anyone does have any follow-up questions that they do think of after the webinar, please do email me, jesse.dukes@ideagen.com, and I'd be happy to pick up any questions and also get your thoughts on the new features, all that kind of thing. So please do get in contact with me. And thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, bye.